Welcome. Welcome to WEED Art and Activism series. Tonight, we have a very special event to honor and celebrate eco-activist, artist, and editor AMARA GEFFEN. Welcome to all of you zooming in from Pennsylvania, the Bay Area, LA, and other locations. I'm Mary White, co-chair of WEED, and I'm joined by co-chair Manoush Zomorodinia, Secretary Christina Bertia, and WEED co-founder and magazine editor Susan Leibowitz-Steinman. Women Eco Art Dialogue, Artist Dialogue started in 1996 and is a volunteer-run collective of female-identified visual artists, writers, curators, art historians, researchers, scientists, and others interested in highlighting the intersection of art and ecological issues. We will start with the land acknowledgement. If you wish, please use the chat to add your own land acknowledgement and your own location. WEED's office sits in the territory of the Wichen, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichonyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe who have campaigned and are campaigning to become federally recognized, the Association of Remetush Ohlone, who are researching and revitalizing and preserving Remetush Ohlone history and culture, and the Confederated Village of Lezon and Sogorache Land Trust, who are working to return native land back to Indigenous stewardship. A little Zoom housekeeping. We're recording this session. Please keep your audio muted during the presentation. The host may mute you if there's extra sound. AMARA's presentation will go on until approximately 6 p.m. After she finishes speaking, we will stop the first recording and start a second recording for questions and answers till 6:30. If you have questions during the first part of the presentation, please put them in the chat and we'll address them in the question and answer section at 6. WEED's vision is to continue for another decade as our global network of women activists, artists, curators, writers grows. We are fundraising to rebuild our 2012 website with new archival tools to refresh and improve the artist directory and membership section. Please give generously to support this vision, either by visiting the donate button on our website or sending a check. And now we'll introduce our wonderful speaker. AMARA earned her bachelor's of fine arts from the University of Cincinnati and her MFA from Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. She joined the Allegheny College art faculty in 1982 and taught at the college until 2018. In 1997, she founded and became the director of the Art and Environment Initiative in her hometown of Meadville, Pennsylvania. A&EI is a community-focused public and environmental art program through which AMARA has completed many projects. It says 17, but I think there are more than that. Through the program, AMARA has brought students and community partners together to support collaborative public art projects that emphasize reuse, repurposing, environmental restoration, and community revitalization. Her work as an artist focuses on how art can facilitate community, economic, and environmental development, and how art can remediate landscapes and places or transform people. And the most latest amazing accomplishment that AMARA has made is that she has served as one of the co-editors of Eco Art in Action, Activities, Case Studies, and Provocations for Classrooms and Communities, which is published by New Village Press. And it's Eco Art in Action is a wonderful field guide that offers practical solutions to critical environmental challenges compiled by 67 members of the Eco Art Network, a group of more than 200 internationally established practitioners. So we welcome AMARA, and we have our co-founder and magazine editor, Susan Leibowitz-Steinman, will share a couple of words about AMARA as a longtime friend.
First of all, welcome, AMARA, and everyone else. I'm really happy to see you all here today. This activist program online has been terrific. It's just started this year, and already so many people have been on it that sharing information is one of WEED's primary goals, and this is a marvelous way to do it. But I'm very excited about AMARA's presentation because she's going to highlight working locally, and so many, I don't know what, eco artists think that they have to travel around the world to make a difference, when in fact we can make a fabulous difference, 1 mile, 10 miles, 50 miles within our backyard. So, and she created the Arts and Environment Initiative. And that's the other thing, like WEED is an example of that too, is if a group of people get together and form an organization, it's really just so much easier for people to get permission to do the work that they want to do and to meet up with the nonprofit groups or the schools or the churches or the students that they want to work with, because this organization gives them a sense of validity and also people to fall back on, to help them, in times of trouble, and to celebrate with in times of good things happening. So I'm going to let AMARA speak because she has so much to share with us. I don't want to take up all her time, but I'm really excited that we're going to focus on the local today. Welcome, AMARA.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Before I share my screen and start, I just want to say thank you to WEED, to the amazing volunteers, Mary and Christina and Manoush, and to Susan, and all the folks who have been quietly working behind the scenes to make this series happen and to help support me to be prepared this evening. And I want to thank all of you who have been able to make time to be here this evening. It's really fun for me to look through and to see students who I haven't seen in a long time, and friends who are not necessarily part of any of the networks for eco art practice. Anyway, it's just really a delight. So I'm going to take a moment and share my screen, hopefully exactly the way I want it to look. So bear with me for a moment and I'll get this show on the road. Okay, so this should be the perfect view. And as Mary and Susan mentioned, what I'm going to be talking about tonight is 25 years of working in my local community, doing all kinds of work. And I think that's one of the things that I want to comment on consistently throughout this, is that my work does not take one form. There are threads that you will see that run through: love of nature, use of natural forms and imageries, working with community, and thinking about how to leverage art to create real change, sometimes in streams and waterways, sometimes in landscapes, and sometimes in public space. So I will be talking about a lot of the images that you see in here as well. So I want to start with my land acknowledgement. I live in Meadville, Pennsylvania. Can you see my cursor? Okay, terrific. So Meadville is located halfway between New York and Chicago in the Great Lakes region. just south of Lake Erie. And it is the ancestral homelands of the Erie Holanon, the Haudenosaunee, and the Lenni Lenape people. And this area was really a migratory place. So there were in fact many other indigenous peoples who moved through this area at different times. Some additional facts about Meadville. It is situated in the French Creek watershed, and famous story about George Washington traveling up the Allegheny River to the confluence, to its confluence with French Creek, and actually spent a night in Meadville on December 8th in 1758. Meadville was founded in 1794 by a gentleman named David Mead. It is home to the third oldest chamber of commerce in the nation. It's the birthplace of the primary election system. It's the home of Allegheny College, which is why I moved here. It is located in Crawford County, and it is actually the county seat, which brings a number of unique opportunities and challenges. There's a strong history of entrepreneurship and innovation with a strong manufacturing base. And so therefore also all the problems that come with Rust Belt communities. Lots of forests, lots of hardwood forest in particular. The city itself is a tree city. The downtown in Meadville has a very small town vibe. It's considered to be a third-class city surrounded by beautiful rural areas. So I moved here in 1982 to teach at Allegheny College. I was hired to revitalize a languishing 3D program, and I taught both ceramics and sculpture. It was my dream job because I worked in both areas and I didn't want to be relegated to one program or another, one media program or another. Through the years, starting in 1997, I created this special interdisciplinary minor called Art in the Environment that offered students an opportunity to learn about public and environmental art with a community focus and actually get into the community and work with the community to generate many, at least set concept plans for many of the projects that I will be sharing with you today. So this is just a little bit about Allegheny College. It's a really beautiful campus. You're looking at the historic Bentley Hall. The college itself was founded in 1815. At that time, Meadville was still a raw frontier town of about 400 settlers. And an unusually large number of those individuals came from Massachusetts and Connecticut. And they had a dream of a college that might bring the educational opportunities of New England to the frontier. The Reverend Timothy Alden was recruited to take on the task. And 2 months after he arrived in April of 1815, Allegheny was established, and Alden served as the first president and also gave a wonderful collection to start a library. Within 12 years or so, he had succeeded in attracting enough funding to create a building, and this was Bentley Hall was the building that he arranged to have built. It has a traditional Federalist central portion of the building flanked on either side by two Greek Revival wings. It was built in the 1820s, and it was designed by Alden himself And it was named in honor of Dr. William Bentley, who donated his outstanding private library to the college. It was just recently renovated also, beautiful historic renovation. The paint was stripped off the front of the building and the original brick was restored. The college has a real commitment to historic renovation and also to carbon neutrality and LEED certification. So it has a number of really good features to help the college meet those goals. In 1997, a group of colleagues from the Environmental Science Department decided to develop a program called SEED, the Center for Economic and Environmental Development. They envisioned it as an interdisciplinary program that included a bunch of faculty from other departments, myself from art, folks from history, economics, biology, and English. And we were each asked to coordinate a community-focused research program that emphasized stewardship, environmental education, and regional renewal and revitalization. This is really what set me on the path that I have been on since then. I served as, oh my goodness, I have lost my cursor. I served as the director for SEED from 2005 to 2011. I was the second and final director of the program, which was concluded in 2011 and merged into a new program that was called the Gateway, which I won't go into. And I think that most of us who ran different programs through SEED maintained them, even though there wasn't the infrastructure for this center. One of my recommendations when I was the director was that I felt the college needed to develop a community development corporation, a CDC. And ironically, that has just recently been done. And the new director of that, Andy Walker, has been a pivotal collaborator with me. Andy has held many positions in the community, including serving as the director of the Redevelopment Authority, and then the manager of Meadville as well. And so anyway, the Art and Environment Initiative was also established in 1997 then. And the goal was to provide students with an opportunity, as I said, to learn about public and environmental art. The other part of this, which was part of why I got into this, other than my concern for the environment, was that I was struggling as a new mother to figure out how to weave the various strands of my life together without losing my mind and without having to work around the clock. And I looked to my science colleagues and I understood immediately that they were doing their research and bringing their students into that research. And I began to wonder, how could I do that? So it was also a way for me to find integration in my own life. So in 2005, one of the capstones for this special minor, and the capstone courses are the courses that really generated conceptual ideas for the projects that we undertook. And we were looking at Mill Run, and we began to ask ourselves whether Mill Run could lead the way to revitalization and sustainability in our town. The downtown was struggling, and this local stream runs through the entire, you're looking here at a map of Meadville, and this is the stream. It runs through the entire city from the outer edge all the way through, and it is open above ground until you get into the heart of the city where it has been channelized, etc. Anyway, the students began to ask whether Mill Run could lead the way whether we could use that as an anchor. And actually about at that time, I became aware of the project that Susan Steinman, Labowitz Steinman did with Suzanne Lacey in Elkhorn City. And I really, what struck me with that project is this idea of a thread, a visual thread that could move you through a community. So the students and went to a meeting that the Redevelopment Authority had organized, and they were asking the community, what should we focus on? And they did an amazing job of pitching to the community and the Redevelopment Authority this idea that Mill Run could lead the way. And one of our colleagues came up with this statement, Mill Run, not your run of Meadville, PA, not your run of the Mill community. And that kind of stuck and provided a frame for much of the work that we did. We developed a plan around this idea of focusing on the stream. And we presented this plan to the Secretary for the State of Community and Economic Development. He provided us a lot of support and a lot of guidance and suggested that we apply for county environmental initiative funding to get started. We began to look into that and realized that, or were told that we needed first to work with the Department of Environmental Protection to undertake an environmental assessment, because the stream had not been identified as being an impaired stream. And in order to really get funding to do anything, you have from these state organizations, you have to have that designation. Everyone knew the stream was impaired, but the DEP did not have the staff to undertake this. So they were thrilled when we said we wanted to do it. I, as an artist, knew nothing about how to do an environmental assessment, but that is one of the things that is also consistent in the work I do. A project appears, someone raises the idea of it, someone brings an idea, asks me, can you do X, Y, or Z? And in many cases, I say yes, particularly if it has anything to do with the goals of the Art and Environment Initiative. So I just rolled up my sleeves and said, let's figure out how to do this. Let's get this organized. And so we did an environmental assessment, working with two faculty from the biology department, looking at water quality and looking at, so doing a lot of water testing and trying to understand, mapping all of the streams that feed into Mill Run. So this is Mill Run. It starts at a lake called Tamarack Lake, which was essentially a wetland that had been dammed with one, or modestly, with one stream flowing into Meadville, Mill Run, and one flowing out into the rural area called Muddy Run. So we completed this environmental assessment. The stream was given the impaired status, and we then found ourselves with funding from the County Environmental Initiative Program, which allowed us to do get started on our very first project. So before I move into that, I want to point out, this is just a crazy, wild collage of different projects, some of which I'll be talking about. But working in a studio in this sort of work is a lot of planning, and a lot of meetings and conversations. And when the rubber hits the road and you're out in actually making a project, you're working with community. Your materials might be earth. They might be reclaimed materials or new materials, salvaged materials. Here we are stripping off cement and mortar from bricks that were removed from the Allegheny College Library, and they were reused in a rain garden. This was the design plan. But anyway, my tools might be, heavy equipment for pushing soil or digging soil or hauling a big piece of a sculpture to the site so it can be installed. And a lot of work with community. So I'm out and about always. And the studio is really the public space. So I'm going to use this map going through as a kind of anchor. So our first project was, once we completed the environmental assessment, took place at Shady Brook Park, which is right here. And we worked in that space for several years, which is another characteristic. These projects generally take anywhere from 1 to 10 years before they're done. We mapped, and when I say we, the students in the class mapped the park, developed, identified from an aerial perspective where the challenges were. This was Mill Run. This is an outflow. This is a big dam that was set up for flood control back in the late 50s. And it really devastated this local park that was a beautiful Olmsted-like outdoor series of rooms with this beautiful little stream running through it and wetlands behind it. And I'll show you a view in a minute of what it looked like. We held lots of community meetings to hear from residents in the neighborhood. What did they want to see? What did they feel the challenges were? And also to help find our volunteers going forward. We also did a lot of summer in the park programs where we got youth involved in all sorts of art activities. I'll explain what you're looking at here in a minute. So there was a lot of work building buzz in the community about the project as we began to plan. So this was one view of the park. The first thing you saw when you entered the park were these outhouses that had graffiti on them. And this is the big dam, flood control dam, a huge dike that before that dike was there, you would have seen this beautiful array into a wetland area, and an outflow with a lot of stream bank erosion going on here and here and further on down the stream. So we, over time and with community input, came up with a transformation that resolved one big problem in the park. And that was, first of all, there was no clear way to use the park. It was just a space. There was a picnic shelter over here, but for much of the season, you didn't use this space because it was flooded. It was wet. So it wasn't, people use the shelter and there's a playground over here, but this whole area was unused. Students at the adjacent high school and middle school articulated the path, where they felt the path should go. Students, we developed a forebay that captured 19 acres of stormwater coming off of a hillside here, filtered it through a sand filter so that it wasn't running directly into the stream, and also therefore resolved a lot of the flooding. There was a beautiful viewing edge here and some rather traditional stream bank restoration work. This is a detail of the stormwater retention pond, a forebay, if you will. It flowed under this bridge, which was built by students at the VOTEC, into the sand filter, and this berm around the edge of the sand filter kept the water from running directly into the stream. So we promoted groundwater infiltration and slow percolation of groundwater through this sand filter, which could remove toxins from stormwater runoff, which is what a lot of the water was. We also did a huge community mural on the spillway. That photo that you saw earlier, the kids were working with our interns developing this. And when we had the dedication, we had stencils of leaves, and people painted a leaf and signed their name, and took a pledge to help maintain and keep the park in good shape. The outhouses received mural treatments that ideas were culled and distilled from the students at the middle and high school again. We held lots of, I clicked once too many celebrations. Here you see the spillway before the mural starting, and here is when we had our dedication event and people signed and took the pledge, and we had a great time. World Water Day the following year, we did a dedication dance performance for that event. So a little bit further down from this site, so here was Shady Brook. The stream is largely open at this point, and it's at this point that it begins to go underground again, begins to be channelized, not again, but where that happens. And I was asked by the Meadville Medical Center to develop a project for this site in their their doctor office, where people would travel from a parking lot, and they would move through this space, and they would go right in this door to the Medical Arts Building. Across behind us from this view is Mill Run. And we had about 10 years before worked with the medical center. Seed had worked with the medical center to help get funding to put a footbridge over the stream to a grassy area on the other side, where they had the plan of making some kind of a meditation space. So we ended up transforming this space with a mural. So this is an example of a more traditional kind of public artwork. We painted directly on the walls. I generally don't like to do that but here in this site, we were protected. We have a lot of rain in the summer, which is really when most of the work for these sorts of projects gets done. So, but we were able to paint this mural, lots of images of birds, and this really vibrant blue color just enlivened the space tremendously. And people now had, as they moved from the parking lot through what had been this very dark and depressing space, they had something a little bit more uplifting that they could look at. There are some phrases from a song that my brother had written. My brother was a cancer doctor, and when he was in his early 20s, he wrote a song that became pretty well known called Mystery. And he had recently passed away, and I kept wondering, what words are we going to use in here? And we were collecting quotes from the community, and suddenly it just really, really made sense to use his words. So we picked several phrases from his song and included them. These are two of the students that worked with me on this project. This was their final experience in the capstone course for the minor. So we were just about over here, and I'm going to take you to another project, which is further into the heart of the downtown area, Market Alley, which is an alley that connects from our historic market house, which you can just barely see the corner of it, to Park Avenue, which is one of the main north-south streets through the downtown. So as part of this project, we did this huge 12-foot by 72-foot mural called Meadville at the Crossroads. The design for the mural was developed by one of our students as part of her senior project. She wanted to highlight both the rural and the urban aspects of our community, and Mill Run runs right through this. And on my website, you can go in, if you're curious, you can go in and see lots of details. So we wanted a really good experience as you're walking down the alley, something historic to look at, the historic market house, and something beautiful that would pull you down the alley and help you want to see that. We also did this blue pathway to kind of signify that there's water here. And in this area, we did a daylighting project. We were able to daylight two sides of the stream. So the Mill Run runs under a series of buildings and connects to another site that I'll show you. So we talked a great deal about whether this was a really viable daylighting project. Daylighting, most of you may know this, but for anyone who doesn't, daylighting simply means you remove the culvert and you open the stream to air. So it gets oxygen, and that is really, you know, we all need oxygen in the natural environment and us humans and the more than human world. So, and we realized it was a significant enough opening to make it worthwhile. So we undertook that project, working with the city of Meadville, the city engineer, who was the manager at the city manager who had engineering background worked with us to figure out how to handle that. We got a grant from the DEP and from DCNR, Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And we were able to take the first steps in making this into a place. Our long-term hope for this, which COVID actually has triggered, was that businesses who are in the buildings on either side of the alley would begin to use that. There's several restaurants there, and they would begin to use that as an outdoor venue. And of course, with COVID, people began to do that, and there have been lights that have been strung up, and tables and umbrellas, and people are actually starting to approach the city and Art and Environment Initiative to see, can we do the next phase of this project? Because we had plans for murals down on the backs of the buildings as well, for where it was appropriate and for businesses that were interested. So we'll see, maybe that will come together. This project was unlike most of the other projects I've worked on, because usually I work up the concept plan with students, then I refine it, and then I oversee the production of the project. But in this case, the city manager took charge of that. And so it was a little easier for me in a way to not have to do all that grant reporting and whatnot. Anyway, the next site. And I just want to point this out. We were right here. Okay, that's where I was just showing you. And from there, Mill Run flows underground until right here. And after that, it's open for a stretch, goes back underground, and then is open channel with a straight channel. It's been straightened, the stream's been straightened to the confluence of French Creek. And I'll show you where that confluence is in a minute. So this area right in here is really the heart of the central downtown business district in Meadville. So in 2018, the Arc of Crawford County, and if you're not familiar with what the ARCs are, the ARCs provide social service support for people with intellectual disabilities, cognitive and intellectual disabilities. And their headquarters is just one block over. So they bought this property in 2018. It was just this building, okay? And the stream ran under it. And they thought initially maybe they would renovate the building and use it for additional space. And then they discovered that there were all kinds of mold issues, and they decided to take it down. It was at the point where Mark Weindorf, who's the executive director of the Arc, he was out at the site talking with the folks who were going to take the building down, the contractor. And I was meeting with another group about a mural on an adjacent building. And Mark and I got to talking, and we both got really excited about trying to do something with highlighting or possibly daylighting Mill Run. But the Arc's vision for purchasing this building and ultimately moving towards making a public space, an outdoor space, was to create a space of inclusion for their clients within the community. So the building came down. There's an old cinema here, which is a white elephant, very blighted building, both as it fronts on Park Avenue and as it backs up onto our site. And we are hoping and have been hoping that the building can be purchased, and at least the back half of the building where the cinemas are, which is totally unusable space, could come down, and maybe we can preserve something along the streetscape on Park Avenue. Anyway, the building came down and left basically a concrete area, which was the floor of the building, a two-inch thick concrete slab. We held a series of community meetings again, looking at what do we want to do in this site. This part here is also owned by the Arc, but it is a parking lot. And so we had 2 or 3 different community meetings, gathered lots of ideas, and began to understand what we would do, which essentially involved removing the concrete everywhere except over the stream. Now, believe me, what I really in my heart of hearts wanted to do here was a complete stream bank restoration, but it didn't fit with the Arc's vision. So, you know, sometimes when you're collaborating with community, you have to go where the community wants to go. You can try to influence in a certain way, but I see my job as working with the stakeholders that have invited me into the process and have entrusted me with helping develop the vision that we arrive at. So we held lots of events through this process. This was an outdoor movie night, and we had a guy named Magic Steve who does balloon art, and Squeeze the Clown, and we had half of this audience is clients of the Arc, and the rest are folks like you and I. So it worked perfectly. It actually created an opportunity for creating the kind of inclusion that we want. And this is something very near and dear to my heart because I have a special needs son. So I'm all too familiar with the level of isolation that happens for people with ID and developmental disabilities. So we also were working on plans for a mural on an adjacent building, and we held lots of community events in the summer, inviting kids and adults to share ideas and images. This is a current view of the site at this point. The pathway, the concrete pathway, was painted blue. I did that with a couple of community volunteers. We were just trying to get a sense of what would happen if we had a really strong color on that walkway. And then we realized that nobody was going to use this site unless we had shade structures in it, which was something that I had not understood until the building came down and we started hosting events. It's basically a solar collector. So we've been experimenting with things slowly. A group of master gardeners planted a whole series of flowers in what will be and is currently a small rain garden area. This is the mural, which I'll talk about in a little bit, that you saw people drawing imagery for. And this is a preliminary plan for what the highlighting. We will be using street bond, a street paving coloration system that gets applied to the concrete. So we'll have a pathway through there, through this, something that suggests water and movement. And there will also be historical signage. We had talked about doing some daylighting, and we decided the cost of it is too prohibitive, that the impact on the stream would be minimal. There'll be a performance stage. There'll be benches in front of the performance stage with umbrellas. These structures that you see behind here are not, we don't have the money to build them. So for the time being, they will not be built. And this is the mural that you saw people drawing pictures of, and we have another mural planned for the building right next to it. So both of these buildings flank our site. So here, the idea is using art to create a kind of outdoor room in addition to the landscaping and performance amenities that we set up. I'm not going to show you this video because I'm aware of the time and I don't want to run on too long. So maybe we can do it if I get through some of these other things. Okay, so moving right along, I want to take us now. So we were right over here, and Mill Run flows right into French Creek, okay, which is the main creek for the watershed that I live in. Here is French Creek on this small map. Many of the projects that I just shared with you occur in this area. So here is French Creek. And I want to take you to this site, which is the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. This was one of our very first projects. We were asked to do something on a new lawn that they had. They had changed the opening access to their building. So students, in this case, in a foundation level introductory studio art class, went in, inventoried the site, came up with the idea of making sculptures from road signs. PennDOT was all for it. And we did a series of proposals. We asked the community for proposals and ultimately landed with the idea of making these very large, larger than life flowers out of reclaimed road signs. 12 of them were made and installed in the project site. Right adjacent to that project site was a 1,200 running foot fence right along the highway on the way to the interstate, which surrounded the PennDOT lot. And this is before anything was done. You could see everything in there, and there was only this chain link fence. You get a sense here of some of the equipment used to hoist things over the fence so they could be attached to the fence. And we made all of this. And when I say we, I would hire student interns from the college and the community. And we would cut these signs using jigsaws and drill holes in them, and then they bolt them together and they would be moved. And as I said, hoisted over the fence and attached to the fence. So here's a before, and here are a couple of examples. To get the imagery, we did a lot of story and community workshops. Children drew pictures for us of what they wanted to see, what they thought needed to be on this relief mural. That the goal of which was to highlight what we love about our community. So we took their drawings and figured out how to stitch them together in an effective way. This project took place over a 10-year period, and I didn't quite get every part of it done that I would have liked to, but we got a lot done. These are whirligigs that were the mechanisms for were made by students attending Precision Manufacturing Institute in Meadville. And we thought that so many of the kids drew these really big snowflakes in the sky, and we wanted to find a way to crystallize that in some manner to make it as important as it seemed in their drawings. Here we are putting up a section of water. This was during our first year, and you can see how we work on both sides of the fence, again, hoisting things over. Someone asked me once what this project cost to build, and it probably, if I had to pay for everything and hire all the equipment operators and all of that, it would probably be close to $1 million project. We did it for about $45,000 just because of the collaboration with the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, who owned the signs and owned the property, and the college, Allegheny College, provided tremendous support for interns who worked with me during the summer on this, and for some of the materials, the nuts and bolts that we needed to do that. So we were right here. Here's French Creek again. We were right here. And the next site I'm going to take you to is a project called In Praise of Land and Water, which was a really amazing project to be asked to be involved in because of that work with PennDOT on the signs and flowers and read between the signs project, when they had a plan to rebuild and renew the bridges, the exit ramps, and not the ramps, but the bridge that goes over Route 322 on I-79. When those bridges were due to be renewed, they invited me to consider with them what options there might be for making this an unusual exchange. And we came up with the idea of changing how, actually, I'm going to go forward a slide, changing how clover leaves are seen. So usually clover leaves, the way water is handled in a clover leaf is, the idea is to get it through that site as fast as you can, absolutely as fast as you can. And we offered a different opportunity. I'm going to go back here, because right here is this little stream, Van Horn Creek, which flows from the outflow of Conneaut Lake, which I'll talk about as long as I don't run out of time, into French Creek. And there was a natural warm water fish hatchery at the conjunction point of Van Horn Creek and French Creek. And in a heavy rain event, it was getting, this fish hatchery was getting blown out. So we somehow convinced them that we could sculpt these clover leaves, the interior space of the clover leaves, and resolve the problem and make something really unusual and forward thinking. And they bought it. One of the ways that we convinced them was, we told them, when you take the old bridge down and you have all of that concrete from the roadway, don't haul it off site. You can save hundreds of thousands of dollars if you don't haul it off site. And if we get into the site and use earth moving equipment to create mounds and hollows and reuse the roadway as erosion control slabs, and also to create a series of check dams, then we could slow the flow of water down by moving it through Paternoster Lake-like check dams. And we could also enhance wetlands. This is a stitched photo that shows you one of the larger areas. So the concrete provided erosion control, and it also helped with the material for the check dams. This is actually me walking across one of these check dams, just to give you a sense of the scale. So it's huge, and they're very effective. They really work. I had great plans for all kinds of wildflowers and whatnot, but the site is too big and the heads of flowers are too small, and it just doesn't have an impact. So the impact is really from the earth sculpting that you see, these sculptural mounds that you see when you're coming around the clover leaves. Okay, so we were right here, and now I'm going to take us west to Conneaut Lake. Actually, I'm going to go back. Conneaut Lake is a kettle lake. So it's a natural inland lake. It's the largest natural inland lake in the state of Pennsylvania. It was created 12,000 years ago by glacial ice. Little piece breaks off, it starts to melt, it grinds out this hollow, this kettle lake. It is surrounded by three, Conneaut Lake Township, Sadsbury Township, and Summit Township. And this lake has always, since white settlers took this area over, basically, this area has always been in contention. Who owns the lake? Who owns the land around it? Who owns the water? Who controls access to all of that? The history and the stories are absolutely amazing and were fascinating to learn about. So the Conneaut Lake Borough was working on a development project for their downtown, and they asked me if I could work with them and what my ideas might be. They wanted something that would brand the city or the town with either a woolly mammoth, because woolly mammoth's bones were found in this lake, or lighthouses. And I said, well, we can do a brand, but we can do so much more, right? There's such rich history. And they were planning to work from this park here, Ice House Park, and all the way over to Fireman's Beach. And I said, why don't we plan a public art trail with history and heritage and art to reflect it. And they loved the idea. We applied for a NEA grant, an Our Town grant. First time we applied, we did not get it, but we were encouraged to go for it again, which we did, and we got it. And we launched the event by working with the Conneaut Lake Elementary and Middle School. And through their READ program, they did a lot of research around the history of the lake, history of life on the lake, and they helped us plan a story gathering event. They presented all kinds of things, that research that they had done, which you can see here and in some of these. My students, and I worked with a colleague, Emily Yoakum, we taught a group of freshmen, which was a pretty gutsy thing to do, but it actually worked. And they were set up as roving interviewers, and they also had story booths. And so people shared their stories. We brought in a well-known activist, community organizer, and storyteller, David Hunt. He came to the event and led a story circle with two different groups in the community. One of the classes in the elementary school made a photo booth. They made this in their art class. They made this woolly mammoth and had their pictures taken. And another one of my colleagues, who I think is in the room, Amelia Carr, was working on a project called the Northwest Pennsylvania Heritage Project, which is, you see this little logo right here. You can, not logo, this little QR code. You can scan this QR code and you can learn about the history and heritage of Northwestern Pennsylvania. So there's a whole bunch of stories and such that are included in.
No, that's a good thing.
I'm not sure who that is, but anyway, we also ran community events at Fireman's Beach, Mammoths on the Lake. And we had music, we had t-shirt making, folks could hand paint mammoths. We had outlines of a mammoth form for folks to be able to follow. We did a sculpture workshop on making small woolly mammoths. Just had a good old-fashioned beachside fun, music, And it was really quite delightful. We decided that we would go with making a mammoth sculpture. And my idea was to develop this, as you'll see, it ends up looking like a woven basket. And there are phrases and texts and pieces of the stories that we gathered are woven into this form. We started, however, with a metal jig that we used to bend the steel rod around. There is a video on my website that you can see. It's a pretty cool video. My favorite part is seeing this structure get cut out and the form begins to appear. We worked on this. Whoops. I'm gonna go, whoops. I'm gonna skip over that. Yeah, I'm going to skip over that. So here's the form revealed. Okay. We worked on this for 6 months from July until December. And the day that we moved the sculpture from Cambridge Springs, the fabrication shop at Cambridge Springs, to the lake, there was a blizzard, whiteout blizzard. It was really ironic to be moving this ice age creature in this weather. The piece is 18 feet long, almost 11 feet high, and about 7 feet wide. And you can see in here some of the words. I snuck some phrases in there that raise that question that I posed: who owns the land and who owns the water? But there were lots of stories about the joy of spending summers, memories of spending summers at the lake. And actually, I think I actually have time to show you this. So if it will start up. I'm going to fast forward it even faster. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. If it starts over, I'm going to stop, guys, and just apologize for messing it up. I was concerned that it was going to take a little too long, but the steel frame gets established. We get a few anchor steel rods, and this is core 10 steel. Established enough to hold the form, and then we, working on the inside, cut out that steel frame and let it go. I made, to get to this form, I made a small model of a woolly mammoth in the position that I thought I wanted it in, and then did a 3D scan of that model, which got me to the ribs for the structure, which then allowed us to arrive at the form itself. So that's kind of what I have laid out. And I just would reiterate that in all of my work, community is what is most important, working with people to impact space. I mean, if you make a space for people, they may use it or they may abuse it. if you make a space with people, they have shared ownership, and it changes the value of that space for them. People often ask me, aren't your pieces, aren't they vandalized? I'm always hesitant to say it, and the superstitious part of me knocks on wood, but we have not had that problem. And I think that it is because of the level of community involvement and input. And then always sharing back with the community in those moments where I've moved out of the community and into my studio to refine design, to make models, to study, to investigate, always bringing that back to the community and asking for feedback and engagement. And I think this notion of using this stream and highlighting it, I would love always to work on stream projects, but in my choice to work local, instead of jet setting around to different parts of the country, which I've had the opportunity to do, but it doesn't feel sustainable to me. It never really did, to do all the things in the scheme of my life, teaching, being a mother, taking care of my mother when she was failing, taking care of my mother-in-law, building all of those things into a life, a full life, and to leave my community when I could see all of the rich possibilities for getting people involved and for really transforming the spaces around us. I think that many of the practices that I use are definitely part of our book. You can look at our book, and you can learn about many other strategies that people have used, eco artists. But I think the linchpin, which you see in this small Venn diagram, is that eco artists, we work in this broad area. Sometimes what we do leans more into traditional visual art, perhaps, when we're able to, with what we're doing, to bring science in, when we're working with issues of carbon capture or solar power or stream remediation. We need that input from the scientists, and community has got to be in there. Community can be so many things: the people in your neighborhood, the community of scholars, residents, etc., government agents, agencies, and all of that stuff done with a love for the planet and a love of place and land and the more than human world is really what motivates every one of the 67 contributors to our book. And it certainly is what has motivated me. I want to give a quick shout out. On May 22nd, we will be doing a session through Weed's Art and Education Zoom series with 3 of the contributors to the book, Vaughn Bell, Susan Honing, and Lorraine Leeson. And they will be sharing information, their work from the book or related relevant work. And the editors of the book, myself, Ann Rosenthal, Chris Fremantle, and Aviva Romani. And I think I saw Aviva and Ann in the room early on, that the 4 of us will be there as well. And I see this as a really exciting opportunity for weed artists and Eco Art Network members and members of Eco Art Space, 3 groups that were formed within 3 years of each other: Weed in 1996, and the Eco Art Network and Eco Art Space in 1999. And Vaughn and Susan and Lorraine are members of both networks. So because they're members of the Eco Art Network, we're able to contribute to the book. But an opportunity for these 3 groups, for members of these 3 groups, to come together and talk and share ideas that are relevant to all of us. And I know tonight that many of you, when I think about the room, and I think I'm going to end my screen share, I think one of the things I want to say because I wanted to see who's still in the room and who maybe has joined in that I didn't know about. But I look at all of you and I think about the creative capital in this room. Steve Davies' work with Project for Public Spaces all around the world doing work of this sort. John Vanko, all the work that he did in Erie, Pennsylvania to transform that community and elevate the arts, and so many others of you. I don't mean to, you call out a few people, then you leave others out, and I don't mean to do that, but the creative capacity in this room is remarkable. And I'm sure all of you have equally important and interesting stories that you could share. And I hope moving into the question answer now, maybe we can get to some of that. So that's it. That's it, folks.
Let's give Amara a big round of applause. So what we will do right now is we will close the session with end the recording, and please put your hand up in the reactions. I see